Everyone, we'll just give it one more minute. Okay, let's get started. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's Community Uninterrupted webinar. Today, we are thrilled to bring you Advertising in 2021 and Beyond, an open internet discussion presented by Quantcast. Joining us today is Sam Gottfried, Senior Manager at Quantcast, who will be discussing the complexity of consented audiences and identity. Sam will explore the internet's original sin, which was allowing users to believe content is free. Today's session will be recorded and made available after the presentation. And we invite you all to put your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to them at the end of the session. So without any further delay, I would love to welcome Sam. Sam, take it away.
Thanks so much, Jill. Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Gottfried, Senior Manager here at Quantcast, based out of our Toronto office. I have a toddler home today, so I'll apologize in advance if there's any screaming that interrupts the presentation. At Quantcast, our mission is to radically simplify advertising on the open internet. And today we work with thousands of brands and publishers worldwide to help them better understand and engage their audiences online and empower those audiences to make more informed privacy choices. Today's topic is one that we're hearing a lot of buzz about in the industry: identity. So there's going to be about 15 to 20 minutes of presentation and 10 minutes of Q&A if we have enough questions to fill it. Please register your questions in the Q&A box, and we're looking forward to a rich discussion post-presentation. For those of you who aren't familiar with Quantcast or haven't had a chance to meet with one of our commercial team members lately, Quantcast is an audience intelligence and measurement company headquartered in San Francisco. Combining machine learning, a privacy by design approach, and live data drawn from more than 100 million online destinations, Quantcast provides software, information, and advertising services for marketers, publishers, and advertising agencies worldwide. Today, we're in 10 countries and have over 20 offices. So today, our industry sits at a crossroads, and the future can appear far less certain than it was just a year ago. There are three major themes that I believe you'll see emerge that'll be the focus of countless news articles and debates in the year ahead. These are identifying consumers in a world without cookies, the importance of first-party data, consumer consent, and the consumer's role in the open internet economy. I'm going to touch on all three of these today and outline how I think they'll impact our ability to thrive as an industry and the potential pitfalls ahead of us. But before we talk about the future, I want to briefly look back at how we got to where we are today. The internet democratized content distribution. For the first time in history, anyone with a phone line and a computer could create content, distribute it to the world, and find their audiences. For those audiences, this incredible new medium opened up a world of possibilities, a truly open internet. Today, 5 billion people around the world rely on the internet for information, communication, and entertainment, and so much more. But in those early days, an insidious myth emerged: the internet's original sin, allowing everyone to believe that the internet is completely free. Yes, we let the world believe that all the diverse, vibrant content available to us all, wherever and whenever we wanted it, had no cost. The truth is far different. Good content is often a labor of love, a product of the metaphorical and sometimes literal blood, sweat, and tears of creators, journalists, and storytellers. Of course, the economic model that funds most of this content is advertising. And on the face of it, life is great. Digital advertising has gone from strength to strength. Even in 2020, with all of the challenges we have faced, digital advertising is projected to grow globally to 420 billion Canadian dollars. That's a big number. For perspective, it's bigger than the gross domestic product of more than 2/3 of the world's countries. So if advertising is the primary source of funding for the content and services that we all rely on, and the ad market in Canada has grown to 8.4 billion, then what's the problem? Power is the problem in this instance. For all the growth in digital advertising, most of the benefit has gone to just two companies. They've built effective services that we all use each and every day, drawing large, engaged global audiences and removing a lot of the friction when it comes to separating marketers from their budgets. The same diversity that makes the open internet such an awesome power also leads to complexity and inefficiency when looking at reaching audiences consistently. With that comes greater friction from marketers seeking returns from their investment. Where before there was chaos and confusion, a small number of now very large companies have created a sense of order, a seemingly safe, predictable environment where brands can easily spend their budgets. This sense of predictability and control delivered these companies huge success and financial reward, and the vast majority of all new budgets spent on digital advertising. And yet, these companies don't account for the vast majority of time spent online, nor do they account for the vast majority of the original content that we enjoy, the content that creators, journalists, and storytellers slave over to produce. So what? So what if a few successful companies have cracked the code and become rich along the way? What if the little guys, independent content creators, local newspapers have suffered? Bad luck, things change, right? The problem with that way of thinking is that we're cheating our future selves. Outside of the artificially curated worlds of the walled gardens, the environment is getting increasingly hostile for content producers. The dominant platforms have a vice-like grip over a publisher's ability to access and create value from their audiences, and that vice is tightening. It's tough for independent publishers, and it's becoming much harder for new voices to emerge. A less vibrant open internet favors giant corporations. One clear loser has been local news outlets, which provide the essential last mile of information about the world around us. Our children won't thank us for handing them this world. They won't thank us for reducing the diversity of trustworthy sources of news and information. They won't thank us for concentrating the power over that information into the hands of a small number of large, powerful corporations. Just as biodiversity is a sign of a healthy natural environment, a diverse open internet is a sign of a healthy society. If we don't act, we risk handing our children an intellectual crisis in addition to an environmental one. Investing in the open internet by directing more advertising budgets to a wider diversity of publishers should be a no-brainer. This is not simply some benevolent charitable effort. It's in a brand's best interest to maintain a broad range of options for reaching their target audiences. Audiences are at the very heart of the open internet. They're more diverse, richer, and more genuine than under the social spotlight of the walled gardens. Unfortunately, until now, reliably reaching a target audience across the highly fragmented world of the open internet has been so much harder than doing so in the walled gardens. The ad tech industry was born to solve this problem, but has also contributed to the confusion by creating a messy patchwork of vendors with competing claims that brands have struggled to unpick and tie back to genuine business results. And the often opaque mix of companies has fostered wider distrust amongst consumers in the role of online advertising. Despite all of this, advertising technology underpins the financial viability of virtually every site that you rely on. And this technology is facing its biggest ever challenge. The last 2 years have seen the beginnings of change. First, the introduction of GDPR in Europe signaled the future in which every part of the internet ecosystem will require clear consent from consumers to use their data, whether that be for measurement, personalization, or advertising. Similar regulations have followed around the world: CCPA in California, CPPA in Canada, LGPD in Brazil, PDPA in Thailand, and I'm sure many more acronyms to come that we'll all likely forget. For Quantcast, GDPR aligned with our privacy by design approach. Becoming familiar with the compliance burden our publisher and marketer clients had to deal with, we created Quantcast Choice, a consent management solution to help brands and publishers easily obtain the consent that they and their partners need to operate. Today, Quantcast Choice enables more consented programmatic advertising in Europe than any other solution in the world. But the changes required to address GDPR and the other data privacy laws are really simply a warm-up act. A post-cookie world is an even bigger challenge. Data protection regulators aren't the only ones who can penalize or shut down companies that don't play by the rules. The browsers wield arguably greater power as internet gatekeepers. While new laws typically take years to implement, browsers like Apple Safari have introduced new restrictions suddenly and with no opportunity for industry feedback. The same companies whose browsers dictate how advertising on the open internet can be delivered and measured also operate large media and advertising businesses themselves. They benefit when the open internet is harder to buy for brands. More and more ad budgets flow to them, even if this means less money to fund the original content and services that 5 billion plus people online enjoy without having to pay subscriptions for. This is why the demise of third-party cookies is concentrating the minds of our industry. They've been the essential thread which connects our ecosystem today. From audience research to managing frequency and campaign measurement, most of the solutions that underpin the open internet economy rely on third-party cookies as an identifier to enable consistent comparison and analysis over time and across sites. The third-party cookie has been in decline for some time, and it's already largely gone from Apple's Safari browser. The impact of changes like this have huge ramifications for publishers. Today, Safari users are generally far less valuable to publishers than visitors from other browsers. Consumers using other browsers are effectively subsidizing the content for Safari users. Luckily for publishers, Safari represents the minority of internet users. Google Chrome is still king. In January of last year, Google announced that they would remove the third-party cookie from Chrome in 2022. And with its larger market share, this is going to create a much bigger hole in the internet economy's funding. So, seismic changes are afoot. The future of the open internet is at stake, and we are entering a period of intense invention and reinvention as things progress. Specifically, identity, first-party data, and consent will all take on new importance and urgency, not just as nice-to-haves, but as central fundamental pillars of a sustainable open internet economy. So, the first of our three major trends, identifying consumers in a world without cookies. For the internet economy to continue to thrive, alternative identifiers to the third-party cookie are going to be essential. Precisely what these identifiers will look like is still unknown at this stage, although companies including Quantcast are working on the solution in addition to supporting industry-wide efforts like the IAB's Project ReArc. Whether or not you believe the browsers should have the power they have to decide the fate of the open internet economy, they're inevitably going to have a heavy influence on its future. The ultimate picture will only come into focus when we gain greater clarity from the browsers that currently dictate the rules. One thing that we can be fairly sure of is that the most scalable identity solutions will use a combination of ways to recognize audience over time and between sites. The easiest way to determine if a particular internet user is a relevant prospect for your brand or campaign is to have a unique way to identify them and understand their behavior over time. Identifiers that provide this type of precision are referred to as being deterministic. Email addresses would be an example of this, and they allow consumer behavior to be understood across browsers and devices over time and are immune from things like cookie deletion. This makes deterministic identifiers incredibly valuable in delivering advertising and measuring its impact. As publishers and marketers increasingly recognize the importance of deterministic identifiers, expect to see more and more registration walls on your favorite sites. The problem is that registration walls generally aren't very successful, and consumers are already tired of being repeatedly asked for consent, which is why we've recently introduced a new solution. Building on the success of Quantcast Choice, we've recently launched Promisio, our new online privacy preferences portal. About a month ago, our head of product for privacy and identity, Heinz Baumann, spoke with the IAB Canada about the role of consent management tools in our industry. Promisio provides consumers with the ability to easily save their privacy preferences, while new privacy regulation is providing consumers with more controls. It's also increasing the number of annoying pop-ups they receive. Promisio gives consumers the power to customize and apply their privacy settings across all of their favorite websites in one place. Consumers create a deterministic login, allowing their consent preferences to be recognized and respected across a variety of sites, bringing back an enjoyable and kind of friction-free browsing experience. This also helps publishers build a deeper relationship with their audiences and is part of our journey towards a consented first-party ID. So, deterministic data is great, but even with new solutions, you're only going to have deterministic data for a fraction of the total online audience. So how do you fill in the gaps? The next best thing for determining for sure that you're reaching the right audience is to know that with a high degree of confidence, you're probably reaching the right audience. These are called probabilistic identifiers, and they use statistic analysis to estimate that a set of activities likely relate to the same user or audience. Not even the walled gardens with their clear scale advantages can rely on deterministic data alone, and they also make extensive use of probabilistic identifiers in many of their advertising solutions. Probabilistic is not perfect, but with enough reliable data and sophisticated modeling, it can be very effective in understanding audiences. So effective, in fact, that we've been using it to power one of our core products, Quantcast Measure, for about a decade now. Today, with insights from more than 100 million internet destinations, Quantcast Measure is the largest probabilistic model of the open internet, creating considerable value for publishers who use it to better understand their audiences, curate content, and win advertising budgets. Any identifier needs any identifier needs data associated with it to be useful. And this brings us to our second theme, the importance of first-party data. Much of the growth in programmatic advertising has been based on the use of so-called third-party data, often sold by data brokers and bought by brands to help with their campaigns. Third-party data is data that's been captured and classified by someone other than yourself, the third party in this instance. Third-party data can be unreliable. It's often old and inconsistent, and increasing privacy legislations and browser actions will only exacerbate these problems. More and more companies are reading the tea leaves. Oracle Data Cloud, probably the largest third-party data broker in the world, stopped offering its third-party data segments in Europe this past September. The truth is, first-party data that is directly collected by your organization and subsequently used by you for measurement and decision-making, has always been superior to third-party data. It's fresher, it's more accurate, it's more trustworthy. First-party data is the critical ingredient in tomorrow's open internet economy. Now let's talk about the last of the three core elements to future-proofing your business: consumer consent and the consumer's role in the open internet economy. Consumer consent is not a new concept for many of you, especially if you have audiences and operations in Europe. But still, the vast majority of sites today don't have a consent management solution, are on the wrong side of GDPR. This will change as enforcement ramps up and there's more scrutiny of consent on all internet interactions with consumers. Economic carrots typically get a faster response than regulatory sticks, and when publisher monetization abruptly drops or an advertiser's retargeting stops working, we'll see a big uptick in the adoption of consent management solutions. And this means businesses are going to need to explain to consumers what data they need and why, and ask for consent. They're going to have to allow consumers to change their mind. We know consumers value free content and that society benefits greatly from it. It's also likely that many consumers don't fully appreciate or understand that all of the content that they enjoy is largely funded and subsidized by advertising. While it might be uncomfortable, perhaps it's time to confront the original sin and have an honest conversation. Regardless of what the future holds, we can't take the open internet for granted. It's absolutely something worth fighting for. There's a lot of work to be done in our near future, but when that work will lead to a healthy and sustainable, diverse and equitable open internet, it's work that we believe is absolutely worth doing, all of us together. And as the world slowly rebounds from the COVID pandemic, digital media and advertising will play a leading role in that recovery. The road ahead will likely have some unexpected turns, but it can, and I believe will, lead to a brighter future. To summarize, change is coming, and successful digital publishers and marketers will require some new solutions. They're going to need solutions to identify consumers in a world without cookies, to better leverage first-party data, and they're going to need to engage consumers to help them better understand their role in the open internet economy and ensure valid consent. When we combine these three easy-to-use media solutions for planning, activation, and measurement, then the open internet can absolutely offer advertisers the same benefits of scale, performance, and simplicity as the walled gardens. When we do this, publishers will capture a fair share of the advertising spend to fund the rich and diverse content that we all enjoy. That's the opportunity that's ahead of us and something we should all care about. This vision requires that every publisher, every marketer, and the technology companies that support them work together to make it a reality. We're excited to partner with all of you to build a Rebel Alliance for the open internet. Once again, thanks to the IAB for having me, and we're going to open it up to some questions.
Thanks, Sam. That's really great. And I feel like we're all singing from the same song sheet, and we really appreciate all your support with the presentations. And, you know, when we had Heinz here recently presenting your CMP, that was great for us. And we look forward to releasing our CMP guide any day now, which you guys will obviously be profiled in. So it's really timely information, and we do wholeheartedly agree that now is the time for companies here in Canada to be thinking about all of this and across the world. So we have a question here. What do we need to do as an industry to communicate importance of an open internet to the average user? And how do we make them care?
I think for us, it's really just communicating and looking back at that, what we're calling the original sin, through a product like Permisio. A big part of it is kind of education on the consumer's role, how this content is funded, how it's subsidized, and how publishers use this data effectively to pay for those content offerings. I think the reality of it and our position is that should consumers understand that, they're going to be a lot more comfortable with the tracking mechanisms that are put in place. And giving them the option and having that be completely consent backed is a huge part of it as well. We fully believe that any solutions moving forward need to be backed by consumer consent.
For sure. So if anyone else has any other questions, please put them in the chat. I guess, have you seen a lot of activity recently with all the announcements of marketers and publishers here in Canada starting to make decisions and starting to change the way that they operate and obtain consent, et cetera? Like, have you been busier than usual?
Yeah, definitely. We're definitely fielding a lot of questions on it. In terms of publishers kind of changing their approach, I think marketers are a little more eager to do so. And the reason for publishers is completely understandable right now. Third-party cookies still exist. We're not in 2022 yet. And until third-party cookies are kind of pulled out of the mix, for publishers to implement these consent solutions that are centered around different unique identifiers, they're kind of discounting the significance of those audiences powered by third-party cookies, which still today are going to make up the majority of the internet. So it's a bit of a chicken and an egg problem for them. Again, once they see the revenue decline and that kind of economic carrot for them is there to do so, I think we'll see a really rapid change.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because you do have to, you don't want to rush, but you have to be prepared, and it is going to happen. It's inevitable. So it is a good point. We have another question here. So how will clients keep assured of compliance? Are there several updates that will have major impacts, and how do marketers stay ahead of it?
I think in terms of the assurances, that's really going to vary from. Sorry, I think there's more to that question.
Oh, I'm going to go back. Hold on. Yeah, how will clients keep assured of compliance? Are there several updates that will have major impacts, and how do marketers stay ahead of it?
Yeah, I think that, in terms of clients seeing the honesty of that in different solutions, I can only speak for us, but we're making this completely consumer facing. We're being fairly open about how we're developing it and how we're deploying it. And I think a lot of that is going to go back to standards developments as well, working with oversight boards like the IAB to ensure that everything is compliant. I'm noticing a second part of the question here. Will marketers see a major decline in audiences as we move to opt-in? I think that's somewhat true. We expect Deterministic to make up a not insignificant portion of what we see based on opt-in data. But absolutely, there may be a decline in scale as we move forward. What we have seen in terms of consent overseas in Europe has actually been a really pleasant surprise for us. We've seen opt-in rates hovering between 85 and 90%. Mm-hmm. So, the consumer desire to kind of help fund the internet is definitely there. I think we can continue to increase that as we work a bit more on the education piece to get consumers on board.
Okay, and then there's a question here. In speaking to agencies, I'm seeing them struggle to understand their role in this and how they should address privacy and identity. Who is responsible for compliance? The brand, the agencies, their partners, legal teams, or is it a shared responsibility?
I think the truth of that is that everybody's responsible for ensuring compliance with regulations, and that makes it a bit more complex. I get that agencies are a little hesitant for providing recommendations just because of the legal implications that may come along with this. It's a bit like offering tax advice, but if consent is not captured properly, that's going to hurt everyone at the end of the day. And we have a lot of experience in this space and frequently consult with our customers to kind of share our perspective and best practices. We've also, just through our work, GDPR, got a unique position on understanding the kind of intersection between legal compliance and technical requirements to effectively operate in this landscape. So that's something we definitely are open to speaking to our partners about, but I think it's going to be, kind of an all hands on deck approach to make this work.
Yeah, I mean, and I would think that the agencies need to make sure that they're educated and informed on all the solutions and all the approaches and the tech available in order to at least answer questions or guide or point in the right direction. I mean, they need to really understand what's what, right? Even if the obligation to comply doesn't lie directly on them, I think it's their role to.
They have to be subject matter experts.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and there's lawyers everywhere to help with the legal piece, right?
Yeah.
But you need to help to be able to filter through all of the solutions. And I would imagine now that we're moving into a new world, that there's going to be solutions popping up all over the place, right? And being able to filter through and recognizing what is good and what isn't good, and what actually does the job that you need it to do.
Yeah, I mean, as those solutions kind of continue to pop up all over the place, we're firm believers that the consent-backed ones are going to be the ones that end up winning. You can give a publisher your email address, and then they can potentially share it out, and you may not have consented to that. So while it may be a deterministic identifier, if you don't have consent for it, we're not necessarily sure how the browser operators are going to react to something like that. Our suspicion is that it won't be favorably.
Yeah, no, agreed. There's one last question here. So is there any research on the value of trust?
Ooh, not that I have personally seen. It's definitely something we could look into. If you want to reach out to me or anyone on the team, I can definitely see what our privacy and compliance team has got for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there is a correlation. I think there is an Accenture study out there that talks about how people are more likely to purchase from brands they trust, et cetera. Like, I mean, it makes sense. It's an old theory that's only being, sort of magnified in the current times, I would think.
I think that the same is applicable to when we're looking to gather consent from using Prometheus as an example, but any identifier or unique ID methodology. If you're placing that on a publisher's site, and this is a publisher they're familiar with and they trust, like a news producer or something like that, that's definitely going to factor in and kind of help push that along as well. So I think publishers definitely have a huge part to play in this, not just from a monetization standpoint, ensuring that they stay afloat through identifying that alternate solution, but helping to educate on how they stay afloat and how they need these audiences to really help them.
So I'm sure it seems quite overwhelming to a lot of people, right? There's a lot going on right now. There's a lot to contend with. We're also still in a pandemic, so it's been a pretty rough year, right? And now you've got all of this looming. What would be your advice in terms of like how to get started? Like, if some people get paralyzed in the fear of actually having to start the process, so what would you suggest is like the first thing that someone should do, in terms of getting started?
Yeah, and obviously I'm going to suggest reaching out to your Quantcast rep, but no, really, I think it's just doing your research, understanding it, attending events like this, and getting a handle on kind of where the industry is headed. Again, based on that kind of problem that publishers currently face, where should they apply these levers, they're going to cut off the third-party cookie and a significant amount of their audience. What I personally believe is we're going to see a very rapid, almost like the flick of a switch. So when this does happen at some, non-determined point in 2022, it's likely going to be a very rapid change, and we all need to be ready for it. So I think doing your research, speaking to the partners that you're currently working with, and making sure that they have a solution or at least a POV on this and a go-forward strategy, realistically, to move beyond the cookie is definitely going to be key to anybody on the client side, agency side, working on behalf of clients, because when this change does happen, it's very likely to be a rapid one.
No, I agree. It seems like you have so much time, and then all of a sudden you don't, right? It's like anything. So I think we are all out of questions. I'm sure what we're finding here at IAB Canada is that on this topic is because some people aren't there yet. There's interest, but the questions will come as they start to wade through, actually figuring it all out. So I'm sure we're going to have you back, and I'm sure we're going to have a part 2. And I'm sure that there will be people reaching out to you directly with questions as they bring this back to their teams and start actually thinking about what this means. So we invite everyone to reach out to Sam directly, or you can reach out to me or anyone at the IAB Canada team if you have questions. We also have Heinz's presentation from the past in our resource library on the actual consent management tool that Quantcast has, and this presentation will also be made available in our resource center for members after the event. So I want to really thank you for this. You guys always give such great informative presentations with really cool graphics. We like your images and themes
That's
through.
fun.
So it's way more fun. So I appreciate that, and it's not lost on any of us. And again, thank you so much for coming. And I want to also thank everyone who, can you hear me still?
I think your audio's cut out a little bit there.
Hear me now? I think I clicked.
That's better.
Okay, want to thank everyone who dialed in and joined us today as well. We hope you enjoyed it and that you continue to join us for future sessions. Tomorrow, we are really excited to bring you a presentation on WeChat marketing. So what you need to know about the super app presented by AV Communications. So with over 1.6 million Chinese Canadians, this audience is digital and fast growing as the #2 source of new immigration and international students to Canada. We invite you to join us for this session to learn all about the super app WeChat. So we hope you can join us. You can register on our event page. It's at 1 o'clock tomorrow, and check out the rest of the events we have coming up this month. We have a ton going on. So thank you all. Stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you again, Sam, for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Anytime.